Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Fantasy Folk, when we discuss all things in the fantasy genre, from books and games to television and film. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me, as my traveling companion down these fantastical roads, is Ron. How are you today, Ron?
I'm doing great, brother. We've got a very fun episode of Rings of Power to talk about today. We had a funny little botch on the intro there that that we will be putting out for our social media followers to take a look at and laugh at our expense. But yes, I'm doing great, and I'm excited to break all this stuff down with you today.
Yeah, what a lot of people are calling the best episode of Rings of Power at this point. Before we dive
Season
into
two.
that, though, I saw some people saying total. I saw some people saying total. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Um, but definitely season two. I've seen a lot of that sentiment as well. But before we do, we started this last week. I just want to kind of keep it going. Anything that you've done in the past week in the fantasy realm that you'd like to share?
I would, and I feel like this week that's kind of a loaded question because you know what I've been doing. I've been playing The Witcher 3. Finally, you got me on board. I've got like I couldn't even tell you how many hours into it right now, but a substantial amount. It's basically like all of my free time has gone to that game in the last like 5-6 days, and it's been really fun.
Yes, I've been playing it as well. So I've been I talked about it last week. I finally installed the PS5 update version of it, and I don't think I had started it last time. Where I think I said I got like one
Hmm.
mission in. Like it was literally very early.
Yeah.
Um, like even before you get to the first town with Vesemir, like it was on like that hill after all the cutscenes. I was like, all right, I gotta save this thing now. But I started actually playing it, and I've been playing it like every day pretty much. Like I worked from home all week because I've been under the weather. So it's like once my lunch break hits, I go downstairs, and for my hour lunch break, I'm sitting there playing The Witcher. Then I go back upstairs, get back to work. Um, so that's been a lot of fun. I'm trying to do like every single mission. So that's been something I'm trying to do. Um, but yeah, so I'm like, currently at I'm level like 5, almost level 6.
Oh, okay.
Uh, I'm only like 11 hours of gameplay in, but I've been doing a lot of side contracts and stuff like that. But I'm doing the Bloody Baron quest right now, which I'm
Oh,
having a lot of fun with.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. It's good to get back in that world. I was, chatting with somebody on Reddit about it too, where they were like, "Is it weird how cozy this game makes me feel?" And I'm like, "No, I feel the same. Like this is
Yeah.
there's a reason I've put this as my favorite game for quite a while is because even though it shouldn't, like it's got scary stuff in it, right? Some ugly designs of
Yeah,
creatures.
that's what I was like. The setting itself is very depressing. Like there's trees with like bodies hanging from them and everything, and like
Yes.
everywhere you look, there's like smoke off in the distance of some building that's burning or something. But you are right; it is very cozy.
Yeah, you get on Roach, you start just riding along and get in
Dumbest
front of a
NPC
fire.
animal ever, by the way. I have to say that's like the one thing that's been annoying the hell out of me. Like the horse mechanics. It's like my god, it's to the point where if it's like my destination is anything under 500 paces away,
You
I'm like
walk?
I'm hoofing it. Yeah,
Really? No,
yeah.
I'm always double pressing L3 to get Roach, and then I'm getting on.
Come on, Roach.
Yes. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm having a great time exploring it again. I never finished the DLC, so my plan is to, do the DLC afterwards. But
I'm
that's
actually
been fun.
I find myself in a bit of a rough spot here because I have the three I've basically fallen in love with three female companions so far, and like I don't know what's gonna happen because like, this is all
Okay,
converge at some
I'll give
point.
you a little clue here. Okay, when it comes to if you want Yennefer, you have to not do anything with the others, pretty much.
Yeah, Yennefer's old news, unfortunately, brother. I moved on. I forget what her name was, but
Triss or Kiera? Which one?
Kira's back at the spot that you
Yes.
start the game. I sent her back there, and then like probably a half hour before we got on stream here, I was playing, and I told Triss not to get on the boat. So it is just I'm just in a situation right now that it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think I have a Triss Funko Pop. I I love Triss. My wife makes fun of me because I actually I was very attracted to redheads, right? My wife is blonde, but I was very attracted to redhead. She knows that, and it's like, yeah. But yeah, so that's been both of our experiences. That also, I'm almost halfway through the first book of Wheel of Time. So
Hmm,
my
nice.
plan is when that is done, I'm gonna probably make a TikTok review or a YouTube review of the book and just kind of share my thoughts on that first book. But it's really helped. I started walking a lot this week again, and my library has
Mhm.
the audiobook. So right now I'm kind of doubling up. When I have time to read, I'm reading the book, and then when I'm walking, I'm listening to the book. So it's really helped me kind of gain some ground on it as well. But it's been a fun time. Um, yeah, so it's been good.
Does that ever mess you up? Because like I've kind of considered doing the same thing with the Song of Ice and Fire books, like because I've hit, I don't want to say a wall like recently with reading Storm of Swords, but compared to where I was when I was banging out
Yeah,
like 100 pages a day, 50 pages, whatever, like I've definitely been slacking a little bit. And I like you know, the weather is not quite as depressing recently and hot and miserable, so I've been out just like walking and stuff,
yeah.
and like I've gone back and forth on whether or not to do the audiobook thing, and like, oh, does it take away from the experience? So like, has
So
it
I've
like,
I've done both for A Song of Ice and Fire as well. I have Clash of Kings audio book on
oh,
Audible, and I
okay.
also have the book, and I was kind of handling it the same way. I don't know if this has changed, but my biggest problem with that is I do not like the reader of Clash of Kings.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
It's crazy how that'll make or break an audiobook for you.
it
If you
will.
don't have the
It,
right voice.
it was struggle. It was a struggle for Fire and Blood too. I don't know if it's the same guy, but it was. I got through that one, but he had a voice that would kind of like send me sometimes to be like zoning out. While there's I usually don't have a problem with it. It doesn't really take away any of the experience for me either. It's just all about mindset, I think, when you get into um like I don't know, like I'm gonna be listening to it now. And then like because I own the book too, I'm more likely because some books that I have audiobooks for I don't own. I only have the audiobook. Like the Star Wars books I read, right? So there's times where I will allow myself now to actually listen to a chapter and even if I'm not going to finish it, still start the chapter. So that way, later that night, I will go and pick up where I left off on listening to the chapter and read it.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Cool.
but it's been good to get like pronunciations. Like, okay, Wheel of Time
Mm.
does have a great glossary at the back that does tell you pronunciations for stuff. So like that helps. But just knowing like certain character names, it helps with that type of stuff for sure.
Mm.
Um, Okay, so we will talk and move forward to Rings of Power, Season 2, Episode 5. Halls of Stone, written by Nicholas Adams, directed by Louise Hopper and Sanaa Hamri, and it aired on Prime Video September 12th, 2024. So before we dive into it, we both kind of said this is the best one of the season, but I wanted to kind of, you were saying last week's was the least strongest.
Mm.
Um, how how was it sitting down and watching this one and it kind of maybe getting you back on board with some of these plot lines? Because you weren't a big Numenor guy either.
Mm. Yeah, and I think I would still put myself in that camp. Like the reason I really did enjoy the hell out of this episode, but it's no coincidence that it was so Anatar heavy. Like I think that's the meat and potatoes of this show. It's very much the quarterback of this show. You know, that grouping of him and Celebrimbor is very much the one that makes this whole thing go. So the fact that we got such a heavy like featuring of them this week is definitely a big part of why I enjoyed it. The Numenor stuff that we did get until the big death at the ending that we'll talk about wasn't really hitting for me again. It again just felt like sort of spinning the tires and like just doing things that we already kind of assumed would be done in the background. You know, all of the people who still supported Miriel trading in their stuff and like all that kind of stuff. It just felt like stuff that could have easily been accomplished off screen. And it was just like, ah. But once they got to that last scene in the shrine, I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time. So, uh, kind of props to them because it was the first time that they've made me care about the Numenor thing so far. And just all of the stuff with Anatar and Celebrimbor was just, as usual, just very, very good. And from what we've seen, and obviously the end of the episode basically confirms it when we see all the orcs headed towards Eregion. It seems like it was the perfect setup for what feels like essentially a 3-part finale, which is kind of weird when it's an 8-episode show and it's like basically like 40% of the show is the finale, quote unquote. But that's kind of what it feels like, this big epic battle that takes place over 3 episodes and all of these storylines converging. It's essentially a 3-episode finale. So I thought that this one was the perfect lead in for it. We got a lot of really fun stuff for us movie fans, us Lord of the Rings movie fans. There was a lot of stuff out there. So I really enjoyed the episode a lot. It was a much needed turnaround from last week for sure.
So I'm kind of on the opposite end of you in the sense that like Numenor was my highlight of the episode.
Ooh, okay.
I love Numenor stuff this
even
week.
the stuff before the ending.
Oh yeah. And in fact, look, there's rumors going around that the first, the people that watched the episodes originally, whoever they were testing it with, said too much Numenor, cut it back.
Oh, okay.
And they did. That's the rumor, right? So as we see, there was only Numenor in 2 episodes so far, right? Like episode 3 and this one.
This one. Yeah.
I do think we actually could have used more Numenor in these episodes because
I got a fever.
The only thing I can say is a downside for me with the Numenor storyline is I feel like Eorion's really switched up quick.
Yeah.
And she says to her dad, like, it's my grief, about losing Isildur. And I just felt like we haven't seen that enough to make her do that switch up. So I don't know if that's some of the stuff that got cut. I don't know if that's like, maybe they felt like that was dragging on that stuff, or if they just never filmed that stuff. No clue. But I felt like we could have used that in maybe one of the first episodes. Word gets to her that Isildur is dead and she really has a tough time with it, when I feel like we kind of skip over a lot of that. The fact that she's dealing with grief, because again, my whole thread with this, that is the worst part, is the Eorian stuff. And I like her actress a lot. I thought she was great in season 1. The issue I'm having with it now is her switching up so much. And then like when she does say, like when they're saying, you have to trade in your stuff, and Elendil's like, whose idea was this? She's like, mine. She's like smirking, and I'm like, that's your dad, dude. Like, what the hell? Like,
no, like remorse, no, like being born.
Yeah. And then she does say like, hey, he actually wanted you dead. Like, I've done what I can here. That kind of thing. It felt like conflicting a bit. So I am interested. I'm very interested in where this goes. But no, I really love the Numenor stuff, and I'm excited to dive into more of it as we discuss here, because the stakes there are pretty big. Because that's going to be it's part of the reason why he even wants to give rings to the humans, right? He knows they're corruptible, but he's also been there. He does say it's amazing. And he's trying to get the rings to men, and Numenor is going to play a big part in that as we get into it. So I'm very excited to see how they handle that plot line. But I kind of know, it kind of reminds me of like the political intrigue of like Game of Thrones and stuff that we usually don't get with Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings usually is so black and white and just orcs versus men and orcs versus elves type of stuff, that getting that type of aspect, a power play for politics, I thought was really, really cool. I eat that stuff up. It's why I like Phantom Menace. I'm like, oh, the politics here, and people are rolling their eyes.
I would just really, before you move on to your point, if they had included more of Aryen, like showing her grief and stuff, and maybe even showed some scenes of Farazan kind of kind of gaslighting her and using that against her to get her on his side and stuff, I think it could have really boosted up both characters and made their their approach and their plan in this show feel a little more legitimate, because I do agree with you. It's felt
Yeah.
very a very snip snap, snip snap. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
huh? Like just
She
so yeah,
seems very committed to Farazan, and we don't know why.
yeah.
It's like just because he's a friend of elves, not Farazan, but Mariel
Mhm.
is like a friend of the elves, and her dad was like, and it got Isildur killed. Like that's what it seems like they're trying to say. But she was kind of talking with Kemen before that too, so it's I don't
Fucking
know. Talk about a guy who has a punchable face.
for
Uh,
real, dude. Top of
that's
my shit list.
you know, great job by the actor because
Mhm.
when you can make somebody hate you just from your role like this, we saw it with Joffrey, we saw it with Ramsey, right? Like,
Mhm.
uh, those roles are probably so much fun, but I do think there's probably some people that kind of take it too far and kind of blur the line between
Oh yeah,
reality a bit,
yeah.
where they're like, "Oh no, let's get them," type
His
of thing.
comment section is probably a very miserable
Yes,
place
yeah,
right now. Yeah,
and it's like I don't
from
understand why
delusional
people do
people.
that. Don't know why people do that.
Well, because
You talked about
people can't disseminate reality
yeah.
from fiction, but we won't go down that rabbit.
You talked about some Jackson stuff too, with the movies. My biggest vibe with that is the ending montage
Mhm.
where they're showing like everybody kind of going onto Eregion, and it kind of felt like this is going to be the Helm's Deep of the
Yeah,
show here. Like it kind of had those vibes, and I don't want to say that just because of like it's a battle, but like the way it was shot, the way that they're like building up to, you know how they would show like in Two Towers the army approaching, and like
mhm,
it felt very similar to that.
mhm. Yeah. No, it absolutely did. Even oh, it's actually kind of funny because if I recall correctly, isn't uh, uh, already doing it, first one of the day, uh, Elrond, isn't he like hesitant in Two Towers to like kind of get into the battle and like help in that, or do I have that wrong? It's been a while since I've seen Two Towers. Just for some reason in my head, I'm just like,
No,
that's like,
I think you're right. I just watched it last year for my other
mm,
podcast. So if people are interested, I might put these episodes up on the feed as well. But I have a podcast called um, Films for the Very First Time. My friend Casey had
yeah,
never seen these, and we talked. We did one for each of the extended editions for these three. It was my first time watching the full extended. His first time watching any of the Middle Earth stuff, and it was fun to revisit. I can't believe it's already been a year since those episodes pretty much came out.
mm.
Um, but yeah, so I think you're right. I think Elrond was very hesitant to, and I believe
Like Aragorn's the one who basically like not bullies him, but like kind of like convinces him to help in the battle. Correct?
yeah, I think you're right. I don't think Elrond actually helps in the battle though, right? Wasn't it the woodland elves that go instead of the like the it's because it's the blonde elves and not the
Oh yeah, true.
dark
I
haired
was trying to
elves.
make a parallel there because we
But I
see
think you're right though when it comes to the extended. I feel like there's a scene in the extended where Elrond is like not wanting to go help. Like
yeah,
people
and then
can
there's an
correct us in the
interaction
comments.
between him and Aragorn when they get there. You know, like some just thank you for coming sort of thing. So I just like in my again, we could be making that up. So hopefully the Tolkien heads out there don't immediately turn off on us. But I kind of drew a little bit of a parallel to Elrond going to Gil-galad and having to be like, hey man, we got to go bring our army there now, and we've got to like help. And he's like, no, we have to go fight the orcs in Mordor, sort of thing. So it was kind of like him being in the reverse role that he was in Two Towers in the ending of this one.
I have an answer already, so we don't have to wait too long for this. But the character Haldir, who is the one that shows up and uh, it says that in the Two Towers he was sent by Elrond and led an army of 500 elves from Lothlorien to Helm's Deep.
Okay.
So it was sent by Elrond, but Elrond did not go.
Okay. Well, there we
So
go.
there you go. Okay, so we kind of open this episode with we'll start with the Durin, Disa Durin
Yeah.
stuff. Okay. We kind of start off this episode with that, and it felt like a speed run a bit,
Yeah.
where we kind of like catch up, like they all have the rings. Um King Durin is starting to dig, right? And they get it to where like light shining through again. They're all like, "Oh, this is great. This is happy." Um, but he's also starting to lose it a bit, King Durin, right? He's looking at rules and he's like, "Who made these laws?" And they're like, "You."
Who put these regulations into place? Let's slash them all.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound familiar.
You did, sir. And he's like, "Yes, right. I did." And he doesn't even have the ring on at this scene. So is he just being tempted so much by it just being in his presence still?
Mhm.
Because it seems like he's breaking down the regulations he had before the rings, right? Where they were
Mhm.
saying we can't take here, we can't do that. That he was kind of issue in the first season, right?
Mhm.
And then he doesn't even have it on, but he'll put it on. I think when um, Durin comes in to be like, "Father, don't wear it," right? He's like, "Oh no, it's
Don't
good,"
do
and he
what?
puts it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do what.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, laddie. I was too busy putting on my ring.
But yeah, so you think he's already like, what do you make of this? Is it just the corruption of the rings here?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Because we see that shot in the beginning of him like eyeballing all the rings, and there's that one blue with the big thick blue rock in the middle of it that
his
it's like
ring.
almost looks like it's calling his name. Yeah, so I think it was meant to show that he's already starting to feel the influence a little bit, and it was kind of cool because that, him using the ring and all this stuff ends up leading to the building of the Doors of Durin or the Door of Durin. Yeah, Doors
Hmm.
of Durin.
Hmm.
Blah, 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 blah. So it's just obviously that's something in the source material as well, but most notably in the movies, that's like one that movie fans will really pick up on. So it was kind of cool to tie it together in that way.
Yeah, the casual fans were the Leo meme pointing at the
Yeah,
screen. They're
yeah,
like, "Oh, oh,
yep,
oh."
100%.
And that look of it too is not exclusive to the Jackson films. In the books, they have a pretty detailed drawing of the doors, and it looks exactly like that. So if there's somebody out there watching, like, "Oh, that's part of the Jackson stuff," that's what you may know it from. But really, like that look is completely nailed down by I think J.R. Tolkien himself. I think he had the sketch
Mhm,
in the book, which is pretty cool because I remember reading the book and be like, "Oh my god, this is like exactly what they made in the movie,"
mhm.
um,
I mean,
which is great.
if we're just gonna do kind of how we usually do, just go like
Yeah.
story to story to
Yep.
story. Uh, the other kind of biggest thing of Durin's story, at least until we get to the end, was that he is now putting essentially a 50% tax on everybody in Khazad-dûm, which was kind of interesting to me. But I guess again, just kind of goes to show how quickly that ring can corrupt and just make you want more and more and more, whether it's money, power, mithril, what have you. So it wasted no time in corrupting poor buddy Durin here.
I mean, just like a usual politician,
Yep,
come in
yep.
office, jack up the tax rates,
Second he gets the power. Yeah.
goes against his campaign promises, right?
Yep.
Um, no, it is. Look, this is why you can't trust the monarchy. Okay. When it comes to this is pretty interesting because he also will say to Durin, I know that's confusing, his son Durin, he will say, "We haven't even tapped like 10% of this mine. Like there's so much in here." I don't know what number he said, but it was like a low number, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
like it was 25 or less percent that
Yeah.
they had tapped into in the mines. And we know so if we want to back it up, if this is all part of Sauron's plan, let's kind of like rewind a bit. Yeah, this kind of leads from the the Mordor stuff, right? When Mordor takes effect, it kind of like spreads throughout. And I think it's just I don't think it's like a physical spreading out, but like I don't know if this awoke the Balrog or something, right? Like that's what it seems to be hinting at, right? That there is something
Mhm.
deep down here. Durin will say it to his dad, like Diza felt this. Like, we cannot
Mhm.
keep going. And he's like, Diza's wrong. Sorry. I know everything because the ring tells me everything in these minds, and we haven't even touched like 10% of this. And
That was a great scene, by the way. Her like down in the
yeah.
with the water, like Jurassic Park vibes a little bit, and just like it felt like oh boy,
And we
because
know
we
we're
know
going
it.
to see the Balrog. We
Yeah,
know
we
we're going
know
to
it's
see it.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering if we were going to get it right there or not.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. But I think these last 3 episodes are just going to be balls to the wall,
Balls to the
packed.
wall.
Yeah.
100%.
Um, but that scene when you have him trying to convince his father of the Balrog, we have Sauron's plan almost, right? Like, he gives them the rings. They're going to keep drilling. That's probably going to lead to the Balrog being pissed off, right? Or
Yeah.
something along the lines that then is going to cause an issue. And it seems like that's part of the domino effect. Now, I think the writer said, I'm not sure if it was the writer or something, said that maybe this stuff wasn't part of Sauron's plan, but the ring for sure is, right? Like, the rings are. Um,
I don't like the writer saying that, to be honest
well,
with you.
that's
Like,
off the top of my head. I think I can't recall
oh, okay.
exactly what was said, but
I was gonna say, like, why not? Like, why not just like have that be yet another? I know I keep using this analogy, but another tentacle of the Sauron monster. You know what I mean? Like, make him be behind as many things in this show as you feasibly can without just outright going against the source material. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
this would be a great example of it. So I just I don't
I
know.
think it's also open enough that if we want to think that, we can probably think that. Like, I don't think anybody in the show is going to come out and be like, Sauron did not plan for this. Like, that would
Yeah.
be kind of a weird thing to say
Well, that's
in the show.
that's
So
they won't, and that's why I'm like, oh, then why would you even like why?
right.
Like, I guess you'll just have to see. Like, I don't know.
Now he
Feels
does
like a weird
promise.
fire to just stomp out.
He promises Diza he will never wear the ring, Sundurin. Um,
Why
so
you always lying? Why you always lying? No, I don't. I think he probably will end up not wearing it, but he'll have a moment where
tempted.
it's like he can either save Durin by putting the ring on, or like after his father, or after like his father dies somehow, like it'll be his choice whether or not to put it on. Like that is 1,000% coming back around, and I don't think he's gonna wear it, but I think him not putting it on is going to cause something bad and like open up a whole new story thread, whatever that may be.
And this is pretty interesting because this is a show creation. And what I mean by that is having two Durins alive at the same time. So the way that it usually is that there is a King Durin, and then later on there will be another King Durin, and then later on another King Durin. And it's kind of like this hinted at that maybe there's some sort of reincarnation of it, like the Durin line, like being the same person almost, right? And this show has kind of made it tough to podcast about because they have two Durins that we have to keep saying
Yeah.
King Durin, Sun Durin, right? But I think this might be a way to avoid Sun Durin from wearing the ring and having our hero be corrupted. It's like, oh, is his
Mhm.
King Durin that was corrupted type of thing. I don't know if that's maybe the way that they're trying to go instead of having like one character Durin who's corrupted by it or something.
Yeah.
That's just my thought. But
They needed to have some dwarf baby faces, to put it in wrestling terms. Like they needed, if it was just this corrupt dwarven king
yes,
who got
yeah.
these rings and was just digging without and listening to anybody and all that stuff, it would have made the entire dwarf storyline feel very uninteresting. So by having that conflict, especially in characters that are so like what's the word I'm looking for, like characters that you're drawn to in the way that you are with the Sun, Durin, and Disa. Like I think it provides a good balancing out there.
No, yeah, I think you're right. So
Also, I guess while we're on just the Durin of it all, really quick. So he goes to Celebrimbor, and he has this talk
yeah,
about like, were these rings made? like there was something that went into the making of these rings that isn't exactly kosher. And I feel, and that's one of the things that Celebrimbor at this point knows. I guess this would kind of be our transition point into the Celebrimbor of it all. Celebrimbor at this point pretty much knows that there is like something afoot here. And that shot when he's after he's talking to Durin and he looks up into the tower and just sees the silhouette of Anatar standing there with like the glowing around him, like just total imagery foreshadowing to obviously the the Eye of Sauron and all that stuff, just looking down on everybody. I thought that was a really cool piece of imagery they used for that story.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about Celebrimbor next. I think there's some good stuff there. Are we ready to move on from the doors? I was just looking at more Durin stuff again. The good thing is that they do all have the same name, so they are able to truncate this a bit because I believe his father's Durin the Third. I don't know if they ever said, but that's
They
the one
have.
that they have. Okay,
Mhm.
so he's Durin the Fourth, right? In the books, not much is said about Durin the Fourth, but like Durin the Fifth or the Sixth is who is the king when the Balrog awakes. So obviously, that's just probably going to
That's
be Durin the
him.
Third or Durin the
Yeah,
Fourth, right? Like, it's
that's
just
who
going to
it
be
is.
what it is. I would assume Durin the Third probably dies. Durin the Fourth takes over
Mhm.
during or before or after the Balrog crisis, which
Mhm.
covers my bases. I just said
Yeah.
during, before, or after.
Always hedge your bets, brother. They'll
One
never
of
be able to prove
those.
you wrong. Could be during the 7th, during the 12th. Who know,
Yeah, who knows? It's going to be a Durin. I'll tell you that much. It's going to be in charge when that happens. We good to move on to Celebrimbor
yeah.
and Sauron.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, yes, we saw the doors of Durin being made. This is where I need it to. I sent you this message that I was like, this came in clutch. I was able to find out that on Amazon, if you guys don't know this, go to the audio options and then go to like, there's an option to do dialogue boost. And there's options for like high and low, I think, or medium. And I put high because on this TV in here where I was watching it, I had trouble hearing the dialogue. Like
Mhm.
when I was downstairs in the living room, no problem. When I'm up here watching it, um, uh, I'm like the music is so much louder. I'm like I don't understand what's going on. When I found that out and did that, thank God I could actually hear the dialogue again. Because for the first bit, I'm like, what do they say? I was ready to put on subtitles, which I don't like to do. I'm not a subtitle guy. Are you a subtitle
Okay.
guy?
Not normally, but weirdly enough, for this show, I have been.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I have friends that will only watch a show with subtitles, and I
Yeah.
can't do it. My
Nah.
eyes wander to the subtitle. I can't
Yeah.
focus on anything else.
Exactly. Yep.
So I was able to find the dialogue boost, and it helped a lot because there's some good stuff in this conversation between Sauron and Celebrimbor. So Sauron is like, hey, as Anatar is still, right?
Mhm.
Now we got to make the ones for men, right? And Celebrimbor is like, no, I'm not doing it, right? Men are not right. We'll talk about it in the morning, type of
Yeah.
thing.
Gives a little
And
pat on the shoulder. Like it's like, yeah, you're totally the one in charge here, Celebrimbor.
well,
Totally.
the best thing is when Sauron's like, I want to make sure you're not being manipulated here by Gilgalad or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, he's being manipulated by you.
And definitely not by me. Most importantly, that's what
But
we
isn't
want to get
that
across.
brilliant? Isn't that brilliant
Oh
when
yeah.
you can
Oh yeah.
be like, I want to make sure you're not being manipulated. It doesn't make Celebrimbor think I'm being manipulated by you because you're like so worried about it.
Hmm.
You know, he's like, oh no, look, he's looking out for me. Like
And
he
did you
wants to make
notice
sure. Yeah.
the second that he starts to sense some of that like maybe going back and thinking too much on it, he goes right to Murdania, the blonde girl, and starts already planting the seeds about maybe Celebrimbor is a little corrupt. Maybe the
Yeah.
rings are starting to take their toll. So when he ends up putting the axe to him, like it'll be like a justified thing, and he'll be able to say, "Oh, the rings corrupted him. I had no choice," sort of thing.
Yep. Yep. Very brilliant when it comes to Sauron. Just Charlie Vickers is great too. There are some times where like when Celebrimbor has his back turned and he'll like smile, an evil
Mhm.
smile, and then be like, and then he'll deliver a line, that when for Celebrimbor to turn back around, and it's like, I think it may have been even around that time about being manipulated. He's like smiling almost to us, like, watch this,
Yeah, yeah,
and
like
then it's like,
Jim Halperting the camera a little
yeah,
bit.
I
Yeah,
just want to make sure that you're not being manipulated, right?
yep. He gaslights Kim into believing that he is being manipulated by somebody who isn't him, Anatar. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it is crazy levels of like got the hooks in at this point for sure.
And then, yeah, he gaslights him again here when he's like, you know what? There was something wrong with the rings. They were made under false pretenses.
You,
You told Gilgalad that you shut down the thing.
yeah,
So this is kind of your
your
fault,
fault.
dude.
Yeah, literally, like dude is just a master manipulator. It's crazy.
He'd be very good at like Big Brother or Survivor or something. Get
Yeah.
Sauron in there. He'd be having everybody do everything for him.
You
Um,
know, he also makes a comment how he says that the rings of men have to basically bring the balance and like draw
yeah,
from the power of the elves and like kind of give to the dwarves. So inherently with these rings, he is creating conflict between these groups now. Because
yes.
by eventually the elves they're gonna realize like, hey, our rings aren't working like they were. All of a sudden, here come the men with all their rings, and it's like, okay, that's why ours aren't. And it just again, just Anatar being 5 steps ahead of everybody, man.
And it's to give justification on why we need to do the rings, right? Like, because you kind of effed it up, Celebrimbor, we now actually have to make 9. We have to
Yeah.
give them the men, and they have to counteract the 7 that are corrupt.
Mm.
And Celebrimbor still's like, we cannot trust men with this type of stuff, and that's when he brings up the line about like, hey, have you been to Valinor? Like, I mean Numenor, not Valinor.
Mm-hmm.
Numenor, it's great. Like, it's impressive. There's still stuff to be done there, but it's a work in progress, right? And they can make it better if we give them these rings. It's kind of like the implication here. And that's not the real implication for Sauron. He's going to want Numenor to fall, right? Like, that's his plan, is have Numenor fall. He's taking out another piece off the board, like he will with Celebrimbor and Eregion, so that way he can position himself to having no resistance. Is kind of his goal.
Yep. So
Um, yeah, go ahead.
speaking of the 9 rings for man, so we know that these rings are they're essentially going to be the Nazgul, the Black Riders.
Yes. Yep.
Do you have any calls on? I mean, like who the 9 are going to be? Do we know all of them yet? Like
Theo. Theo.
Theo,
Theo.
Theo seems like a lock. Farazone also feels like a lock.
Well,
Kemen probably feels like a lock.
Pharazôn or Kemen, but here's the thing. This is where I get speculating a bit here, because the whole fight for keeping Numenor and getting and like installing Pharazôn and removing Mario is because they're elf friends.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to accept the gift from the elves, so it's got to be either positioned differently, or like we're going to use this weapon against them, type of thing. Like that's where I question who will get that. Like, or does Kemen? I saw a theory of Kemen does get that because he wants to displace his father, and
Mm-hmm.
he'll use that power to do so, or like that type of stuff.
Well, there's that moment too where he's talking to Farazone and he's like, "Your mother prophesied that your life will come to ill ends." So, like, that kind of leads me to believe that he'll probably be one of. If they're not both, then Kemen will probably be the one. If it's only one of the two.
It almost came true this episode. If
Yeah,
Elendil doesn't
yeah.
interfere.
No, for real. Um, I also I gotta say it cracked me up too, because after he says that, what's his name? Kemen's like, tell me what my mother said. And he's like, impress me in this task I'm about to send you on, and I will tell you everything. It felt like something straight out of like a side mission in like The Witcher or Skyrim or something. It really, like, the phrasing of it, the way he put it too.
Yes.
Like,
It's
I
the
just
Bloody
totally,
Baron quest where it's like,
yeah,
find my daughter, and I'll tell you where Ciri
I'll
is.
tell you what you
All
want
right.
to know
Ugh.
after you do this. Yeah,
Let me go. I gotta go do this, and I'll come back and get the info dump.
yeah, 100%.
No, that's
But
funny.
yeah, I'm interested. There's Valandil was one of the ones that I had in mind for it before we got to the end of this episode. Obviously, um, I feel like at least a few of the ring holders for men are going to have to be people we haven't met yet. Maybe
Yes.
that'll be like the link to introducing more new characters in this season, the way we've got like Miriel and all these others.
Yeah, I think that's true. Because it's not going to give us. I don't think they're going to give 9 to the characters we know, or else that's every men character we know.
Basically,
right? Like,
every named man character. Yeah.
but eventually, I think Elendil gets one.
Okay, did not know that.
I don't know. That's what I would think, right?
It
like,
would be really cool if he gave some rings to the Farazone faction and some rings to like the Mariel Elendil.
Yeah, don't tell them there's 9 and be like,
yeah, we're giving these rings only to you. We're giving these rings only to you. And then like they're like essentially in a conflict and like they have these rings involved in it, and just that could get really kooky in a good way.
Yeah, I'm just trying to double check if he has.
Because if he has one, then he is one of the Nazgul, right? Because isn't that?
Yeah, so maybe not then, right? Because I don't think Elendil.
Oh, they could change it. I mean, like they've changed
They
already.
can.
So I think that would be cool if they had. It's a combination of characters who are good and characters who are bad, but no matter what their alignment is, none of them can resist the temptation of the ring, so to speak.
Yeah, all I see for sure, I don't see for sure he has a ring. So they, like you said, unless they change that, he will, survive all the way up to the last alliance, obviously, because that's the sword that breaks and that Isildur takes and cuts the ring off of Sauron. So spoilers for season 5.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched the first 10 minutes of Lord of the Rings, okay. What was I going to say with this? Real quick. I wanted to talk about with Celebrimbor. Oh, they were testing out the rings, right? They were making 9 rings for the men, and they what's the lady elf's name? I totally forget.
I have it written down here. Murdania.
Yes,
Murdania.
Yeah. She puts on the ring, becomes invisible,
and goes like crazy, and starts like seeing stuff, and like basically she's having this vision in her head of that Sauron has essentially planted there, but is reacting in real time to these things she's seeing in her head. So she's like running around swatting stuff and like
But just thought that's funny. It's like a prototype of the One Ring, right? Where you put on the One Ring and become invisible. So
disappear. Yeah. Yep.
Makes me wonder if what she was actually seeing was like what Frodo sees when he puts on the ring.
Yeah.
And we see gets all like,
because we see at the end of the episode, and we've seen that shot a few times in the show now, or in this season specifically, like episodes ending with Sauron standing over that cauldron of the bubbling magma and all that stuff, crafting the ring, which really just kind of goes to support what we said, I think, is it last week, about how the last shot of the season is going to be him in Mordor over Mount Doom crafting the One Ring. So they've been kind of planting those seeds in the end of the episodes, at least the last couple. So it seems like that's probably where we're headed.
Yeah, and I do wonder if that's still where we're headed, because let's play it out. We have 3 episodes left. If that is going to be a lot of the battle for Eregion, then that means that the rings for men have to be done or close to done. They could do a time skip, and
Mhm.
and say like at the beginning of next episode, be like, here's the 9, and you're like, okay. So he could then escape and get to
That's what I think is
Mordor
going to
and do
happen.
it. So,
The episode will open with like all those rings being finished. Yeah.
but let's say they come under siege when he's making them, then I'm not sure if they'll be able to get to that by the finale. But I do think they'll just kind of speed run that and be like, here's the
Mhm.
9, we worked on them, type of thing.
Or maybe they do a thing where like the orcs end up getting their way in, and like Anatar just while they're in the middle of creating the rings, and Anatar just like absolutely wastes them, and Celebrimbor sees him just like, I mean, they're orcs, so they're shitty, but at the end of the like he just sees Anatar essentially just wipe out, like a dozen orcs at once or something like that, and then it just really sinks into his head of like, okay, this guy is fucking out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wonder, it's got to be that he decides to make the One Ring in Mount Doom because Eregion falls, right? Like, or else I feel like he
Oh,
would
good
have
idea.
made, I think he would have made it there because he was already making all of them there, right? Like he's made the dwarfs ones there. He helped with the elves. He's gonna make the men ones there. We see like in a trailer him walking through a Region and it like
Mhm.
falling behind him and stuff. So
Yeah.
I do think that's probably the Forge falling. But I do wonder if like lore wise, at least in the regards to this show, if Eregion hadn't fallen, if he comes to Celebrimbor next and be like, now we got to make one that rules them all, and
Mhm.
he's like, what? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but because why else go to Mount Doom to make it, or why didn't you make all of them at Mount Doom, right?
Mhm.
So it does seem like he needed the forge for these, and then he'll take whatever he learned from working with this forge and put it in practice in Mount Doom to make the One Ring or something.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because I always kind of like the way that I always like took it in was that the One Ring needed to be forged at Mount Doom for some reason, but like that's never really been outright stated to my knowledge. So like
Right.
that would be an interesting way to kind of twist it around. It wasn't like, oh, I have to do this on Mount Doom. It's like, no, this was just the next best place sort of thing.
Yeah, like I wonder if that's like, if he's like, well, Eregion's fallen, where else has really dope fire?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Mount Doom, I can forge it in that.
yeah.
Or if it was one of the things like, again, what you were saying, I have to forge it here because my secret plan is that it can only be destroyed and where it's forged. So
Mhm.
it's going to be forged at my home. So that way I always am protecting it. Right. It's like
Yeah,
almost like capture the flag. Right. Like
yeah, yeah.
you're like, I'm going to protect this base the whole time. So I'm going to build it here. And if I ever lose it and it has to come back here, it has to come back to me for me to
Mhm.
stop it. Like, I feel like that's a good plan from Sauron. So
I agree.
it could be either or. Let's talk about Elendil
Mhm.
and the rest of that stuff. So we kind of alluded to some of it, but Pharazôn is now in charge, and he is booting Mariel's loyal soldiers like Elendil and Valendil. You mentioned about how you thought maybe he would be a ring bearer at some point. I feel like most book fans knew. I don't really equate myself in this because there's people that know these tree lines better than I. But
Mhm.
I remember in season one, the talk was why did they name a character Valendil when that's Isildur's son? And
He's a yeah.
people start theorizing like, oh, well, it's maybe he does something heroic and dies, and
Mhm.
will get named after him, and that's pretty much exactly what
Lo and
happens. Like,
behold, yeah. I was
but I
so
remember,
mad
yeah,
too. Like Kemen was one of those characters who like he was more like an annoying fly before this. It was like, shoo, just
yeah.
go away.
Before he had
Now
power, yeah.
yes, now he is even usurped Theo on my shit list. Now just like my goal of this show is to watch him die the most painful death possible. And I'm sad that it's not probably not going to happen, and he's just going to end up being one of the Black Riders. So whatever.
Hopefully they do just kill him off,
Yeah,
because that would be an epic win for all the fans watching it. Be like, yeah, like that's your
fuck this
purple
guy,
wedding
dude.
moment. You're
Yeah,
like, yes.
yeah.
But no, Kemen, yeah. They fight at this religious ceremony. That Elendil is at, and a lot of the loyalists are at, and they're kind of putting candles in the water to float on for the people that have died. Isildur's, I mean, Elendil's is of course alluded to be for Isildur, who he thinks is dead, and uh, they kind of come in being like, "Oh, stop! You got to stop this!" And they just make everything 10 times worse, right? Kemen and his friends come in, and they're like, "Well, like, uh, what? Like, you're coming with us?" Type of stuff when it comes to the priest type guy.
Yeah.
And Elendil's like, "No, I'll escort him out." Right? Oh, and give us the statue. He needs it. Apparently, the belief was all of their good wishes for him or whatever would not go to them if this thing is smashed or not stored properly.
Yeah.
So what does Kemen do? He purposely drops it, breaks it, and this is what starts the fight. My favorite part of the episode, by the way, is when Elendil is about to say something to him, and he's like, "Oh, but I've been promoted to," and then it's just like, bam,
Right.
punched in the face. Like, I don't care where you've been promoted, buddy. And
You've been
you're
promoted to
punched.
my 5 fingers, motherfucker.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he ends up with getting a fight done here, and then Valandale enters the fight, ends the fight. Like, I don't know, breaks his shoulder, dislocates his shoulder,
Snaps
whatever,
his arm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just bang. I was like, yeah.
And Elendil, being the good guy, is like, "Stop! Don't do this." And as soon as Valandil turns his back, Kemen stabs him. And I was actually, I was like, I don't want to say I was shocked it was Kemen who did it, but I was wondering with them hiding him if it was going to be revealed to be Eregion instead.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like I was kind of like, it's probably Kemen because I don't know where else Eregion could come in at to like stab it. But she just had this conversation with Valandale about how he is one of her best friends, and he's kind of like, "Are you really? You don't act like it right now."
Mhm.
And I thought that would have been a really fun twist. I'm kind of glad it wasn't because I think it would have pushed her to too irredeemable.
Yeah.
But when they were hiding her, I was like, why else would they be hiding the person who stabbed him? If it was Kemen, and of course it's just for like the dramatic effect. But I was like, when he drops, am I seeing Eregion or Kemen here? And it was Kemen.
Yeah, no, that was good. And I kind of went back and forth on them killing him. So like at first I was like, he was a really promising character. It seemed like he could have a big kind of role going forward. And then it just kind of hit me like, some characters are just side characters. And if you can make people care and like be upset when you kill a side character, that means it was an effective side character. And I think that's kind of what Valandil was. He was just a really effective side character, and like judging by the reactions on social media, like people were upset to see him go. And that's in a show like a Lord of the Rings or like a Last of Us, Walking Dead, something like that, where deaths are so common, Game of Thrones, like all you can really ask from a character is that you care when they're not there anymore. So I think they accomplished that, and I think the actor did a really good job in a sort of limited role. So and it pushed the whole Numenor story forward in a big way, which is something that I think that arc desperately needed. Like that was the match that lit things, and I think it's about to start really getting hot and heavy, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, this is, I don't know. This is where we can see Numenor maybe getting a tighter focus on. I saw some people saying they're going to have to introduce more Numenor characters
They are,
because we've lost some, but I think we don't have to. I think we really like give us more Elendil, give us more Earian, give us more Kemen and Pharazôn and Mariel. That's really the ones you need to focus on because they're the ones really in the center of this spat, and just kind of like focus hard on that. I think would be a really, really great thing. Um, I don't think we need too many more side characters in that. I mean, obviously, side characters would be fine, but I don't think we need like another main character in Numenor. I do think Isildur goes back to Numenor at some point. So that'll be our character then, and then I think that'll throw in the wrench, right? When Eorion's like, oh shit, my brother is actually alive. Everything I've been doing, and maybe that's her introspective moment then, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, he's alive. Mariel didn't actually cause his death. I'm kind of been overreacting.
Yeah.
Kemen and Farazan are doing really bad things, like disturbing people's right to practice their religion and stuff. Like, it can get that way for her, maybe, and that'll be the wake up call. It's just like, will that happen now, or is it like season 3, episode 1? Isildur comes back from,
Oh yeah.
you know,
That's I
throwing
wouldn't
it.
even be
Yeah,
shocked if that was like middle to end of 3. I think
yeah,
Isildur still got some stuff to do in Middle Earth before he gets back to the island.
yeah. It'll be curious to see what Isildur does right next, because not that he's really focused in this episode at all, but it's just we don't think he's going to be in the battle, right? So he
Yeah, yeah.
is. Where do they go? They freed Theo from the Ents. Like, okay, what's the part now? I could see him being like, all right, now I have to try to find a way back home, and
Mhm.
maybe that's not like, I doubt that would be somebody like, oh great, I actually have a boat that you can take there. Like, I don't think it'll be that easy, but maybe then that just set him on his journey to find a ship to get him back over there, type of thing.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, and then just for the last thing here, I have the build up to the battle, which of course, like, we have Gilgalad in here for a second, who's talking to an advisor who's like, why are you so believing strongly these visions from the ring? Like, we have no proof that anything actually bad is going on in Eregion, is kind of what they're saying. And Elrond finally does arrive. He's like, the armies are heading to Eregion. Like, we have to go there. And then, of course, Adar at the end getting Galadriel and saying, hey, actually, maybe you could be a potential ally because we have the same enemy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I was surprised we didn't get more of Adar and Galadriel in this episode, but I think that would be a hell of it. And I think we referenced this in our last episode, just the twist that would be of it's actually like Galadriel working on the side of the people attacking Elrond and his army to get to Sauron, and Elrond is like defending Sauron and like doesn't even really know it, and just there's a chance for some really interesting dynamics there to play out.
Yeah, because they got what we do know, right? Is that they think everything. This is where Gilgalad, I think, is. I would have loved to have a little bit more of him this episode, because we know he gets a letter from Celebrimbor
You could
that
tell in his
says,
face too, he knows it's bullshit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like, I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of that from him.
Mhm.
We kind of get that a little bit set up from the advisor, like I was saying, the person that's reading it and like saying, why are you so strongly believing the visions? I guess that's kind of alluding, hey, Gilgalad doesn't really believe it. But, so you get the letter and you're like, okay, well, we definitely know the people I sent out to send a message were killed. And then we do know Sauron was, you know, uh, playing a role in this originally. And then we get a letter from Celebrimbor saying, "Hey, everything's great. I'm glad to hear that the
Stop
rings
by!
worked out.
Come have some
Yeah, come
tea!
stop
Yeah.
by." Yeah, and I'm really curious to see how that's gonna play out for Gilgalad. You know, there's not much he can do at this point, right? The people he sent out there have come back to him. Elrond, right? And Galadriel is now talking with Adar, and we don't know how that's going to work out. Like you said, it's kind of, we discussed it last week of, does she attack Elrond and them, or do they find out that do they find out that Celebrimbor is compromised with Sauron, and then they are trying to all get into there? That could be something that's happening. So I really want to know how they're going to kick that off. And I think it won't be right off the tip of the next episode. Like, I think we're going to get a great conversation with Adar and Galadriel at the beginning of the episode, and then maybe the battle can start halfway through or right near the end of the episode.
Mhm.
And then you'll probably have the battle go from that episode to the 7th episode to the 8th episode is what we've heard.
I also don't see Celebrimbor making it out of this. I
No,
think
this is where he
once,
dies. Yeah.
yeah, once they have once Sauron has the rings for the men, his role, Celebrimbor's role is over. So I think that's going to be like, I just, in my head, I have this picture of like, the battle's over and like, it's like Galadriel and Gil-galad and Elrond and maybe even Adar. They go up to the forge and they see Celebrimbor dead, or maybe dying, and maybe like in his last like dying breaths tells all of them about what's going on, and now the rings for man have been created and all that kind of good stuff. Who knows? Maybe Adar even ends up with one of those rings. He is half human.
Yeah. No, there's look, this is where I'll give you the background a bit before we head out on Celebrimbor in the books. What we know of him. We've kind of started seeing the seeds of this with the Anatar stuff, where Celebrimbor distrusts Anatar. And I think we kind of start seeing that in this, right? But the Smiths of Eregion were deceived. And that we definitely see in this, where he's starting to plant the seeds to the Smiths of, Celebrimbor is not so great. Like, let's keep working on it. The Smiths then made the rings, right? And Celebrimbor made the 3 elven rings without assistance from Sauron. That's still what happened in this. Then let's see. When he brings his forces to Eregion, Sauron attacks Eregion. Celebrimbor is captured and is under torture and is forced to disclose the locations of the lesser rings. But he would not reveal the whereabouts of the 3 greatest to him that he had sent away for safekeeping. Those are the 3 elven rings.
So none of that's going to happen in the show.
I could see him asking where the elven rings are. Because I don't think he has any clue.
You don't think Sauron has a clue?
No, because he was gone when they took those rings away.
Yeah, I think for the show they'll probably simplify it because it seems like very obvious, like with the way that whole thing went, that he would probably know. The 3 that got him were Elrond, Galadriel, and Gil-galad, who I know that's not who has them now.
Yeah, I was gonna say Círdan has one right now.
But that would be probably the assumption he would be working under, and he's 2/3 right. So
yeah, well, I wouldn't be shocked if he's like, "Where are the rings?" Or if this is just going to be totally played as if he's Anatar the whole time, right? But yeah, he's definitely not going to be like, "Where are the 7 dwarf rings?" He knows where those are, right?
They're right here.
But he does kill Celebrimbor with torment, and his body was shot with arrows. We saw that in his vision. But now we do have an army sieging there. It may not be under torment, but maybe what if it's like confusion? Either the orcs do it or Elrond and them accidentally kill Celebrimbor where they're trying to get Anatar. You know what I'm saying? And like it ends up being a casualty in the battle. I could see them going more that route as well.
I totally could.
But yeah, that's the main stuff here. So he ends up dying. And then he is actually hung upon a pole and was later paraded as a banner when Sauron attacks the Grey Havens. I don't think that'll happen.
They should. That would be so sick, but I know it's a little too much, a little too over the top.
I don't think that'll happen, but it could.
He just rolls up. He's got him on a stick. Oh, that'd be crazy.
I just want to say, too, when I was writing my notes earlier, I accidentally wrote Celebrimbor. And I was like, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool name for him.
That is pretty dope. What's up, my Celebrimbor? I've resorted to just calling him Brimbor in my notes. I'm like, it shortens it just enough to where I don't have to type that whole thing out every time. But yeah, Celebrimbor is pretty sick.
Yeah, especially like maybe that's the ship name for Celebrimbor and Sauron. It's like Celebrimboros, right? They
Yeah,
were making the rings, they're
yeah.
working
There's
together.
like two hands like clasped together. That's like the sigil.
Yes, yes.
Or it'll be like
Uh,
Always Sunny. It'll be the bicep
yes.
looking for fellow dudes looking to make rings and be bros.
All right. Anything else before we head out this week?
No. I think we pretty much covered everything. We got some slight news on Hedge Knight stuff coming in. Night of the Seven
Oh
Kingdoms.
yeah, 6 episodes. You're
Yeah,
thrilled.
which yeah. So like that's like basically all the news that we got, and I don't feel like being negative about it. But yeah, it's gonna be only 6 episodes, so
To be fair,
whatever.
to be fair, what I'll say about
Just
that
make
is
it a fucking movie. Sorry.
it's based off of novellas, so they are going to be uh, shorter stories to work with. And George
It
is
would make
actually
$500 million if it was in the theaters. I genuinely think it would.
very excited about that one. It's the one he keeps mentioning as being on track pretty well. So I think
God knows his projects aren't on track. Write the damn book, George.
until
Write the
season
damn
two,
book.
when he ends up probably making a blog post about that one.
And spoiling the next 4 seasons of the show.
Yes. No, another
Love
big
you,
news
George.
was apparently Amazon's very happy with the numbers for Rings of Power, and a source said that they're committed to their 5 season arc. So, of course, that could change if season 3 plummets, but it seems to have found its audience.
Mhm.
I know people were really trying to say like last season 50% dropped from like the first episode to the second, but like the first episode was the most watched thing like ever pretty much because it's everybody has Prime and it was Lord of the Rings. It didn't catch everybody's attention, you know. But I mean, it's gonna be on track to be
Trajectory's going back up.
one of their top 5 seasons of releases, and in fact, um, I think the number said it looked to be higher than The Boys season 4, which that's a big show for them. So the
Yeah.
fact that it's making more than that, is pretty good. It does very well overseas. This
Yeah.
show, it may not be doing as well over here, but overseas, this thing pops. So
Yeah. I'm just
I
waiting
think we're
for the
locked in.
crossover. The boys and Rings of Power. Oi, Celebrimbor. Sorry.
Sounds like you're dwarfs.
Yeah, really. Oh yeah, him and Durin. That
Yeah.
Butcher and Durin would be an electric combo.
Oh boy. Okay. That'll wrap us up. We had some news, we talked some cool stuff, and then we talked the episode. Some good stuff going on here. Next week we'll talk episode 6. We only got 3 more weeks left of Rings of Power. Then we're gonna try to pivot a bit to diving into our love of Westeros and just kind of talking about Game of Thrones, what got us into it, all that good stuff. So that'll be coming after Rings of Power wraps up. And then we'll probably dive into the blog post from George and all that great stuff for House of the Dragon season 2 controversy, season 3 controversy.
Y'all gonna see my real hater finally come out on this show.
Yes, there you go. All right. Well, at Fantasy Folk Pod on all of our social media, make sure you check that out. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time.